Hello and welcome, my name is Sharon and today I'm going to talk you through a gorgeous floral design using this wonderful green orchid, and it's very much inspired by the line or vertical design that you often see in both floristry and flower arranging, and it's quite often the very first design that you learn when you come into the industry, either as a commercial florist or you start to learn to arrange flowers from your own garden. Now today I've got this wonderful exotic orchid, real statement flower, and it's got an almost burgundy red shade in the centre there. So I also have a wonderful large-headed red Naomi Rose that will bring out that wonderful colour there in the centre. I've got a choice of foliage that we'll talk through as the design is coming together, and I've got some black eucalyptus. This is actually a dyed eucalyptus and it's also been dried. I've dried this myself, and I've chosen this because it obviously gives me a beautiful link in colour between my foliage and my container itself. And the container, you might probably have seen these before, they're quite easily available. It's a plastic container, affectionately called a cube, obviously because of its shape, and I've just put a fresh floral foam block in the middle, and I've secured it on either side with just some small pieces of foam, and you'll see that I've cut it low and below the height of the container. Now this design is going to be a little bit more contemporary or modern in its style, and it's probably a little bit more minimalist rather than traditional with a huge amount of flowers and foliage in it. So I've chosen to keep my foam below the container, and then that will enable me to avoid overfilling the base and stuffing it full of foliage, which will give me that very heavy section there at the bottom. So let's start with our flower material today. So we're looking at this fabulous orchid, and I'm going to start with this main focal flower first. This one I think has snapped, so we're just going to remove that off using the scissors. Sometimes they get a little bit damaged during delivery, and obviously with this orchid there's an obvious front where you can see the gorgeous red centre, and then it's just plain green there on the back. We're going to give it a nice clean cut on the bottom at a 45-degree angle, and I'm aiming for this to be pretty central in my foam, and it's quite a tall flower, so we need to go into our foam a good inch or so and make sure it's nice and stable and nice and secure within our base. So the base is visually very heavy. The dark colour will attract your eye, so we need to make sure that our flower display on the top is more dominant than our container itself. And the basic sort of guidelines are at least twice the height of the container. I have some foliages to complement the design, which will allow me to go a little bit taller if I need. But for now, that wonderful orchid, centre stage there in the middle. And because it's such a statement flower and has such beauty and it's so joyful to look at, we don't want to overfill it and clutter it up with lots of other flower material. It's really going to speak for itself. So at the base, I'm going to start using my foliages to create some width to my design, to give me some interesting textures and shapes down at the bottom. And I'm going to start with, this is what in the UK we refer to as Fatsia japonica, but some of you might know it as Aralia. And these are going to give me straight away a huge area covered of my floral foam, and I'm going to sit them on top of one another in a sort of layering and terracing method. So we have some visual weight there at the base, and straight away with just 2 leaves I've covered my floral foam container. And to give me a little bit of contrast at the back, I have a wonderful palm that I use a great deal in this style of flower arranging. It's a little bit big, the full size that it is at the moment, so I'm just going to use the scissors to cut off a little bit of the length of each of the fronds so that we have a much smaller leaf far more in keeping with the Fatsia there at the front. Angle slightly, so from the front you can appreciate all the fabulous textures and the shape of that leaf. And again, straight away, just one leaf, and I've covered nearly all of my floral foam at the back. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use another of these wonderful leaves, a little bit shorter this time, so that it's not the same length as the first leaf, shorter, and that's going to come a little bit closer to my focal point where the base of my orchid reaches the floral foam. So you'll see that I have the leaves on different elevations, different planes, and that prevents the design from becoming very flat and not very interesting to look at. Now I have a really textural foliage. This is affectionately called Ming Fern. It's one of the asparagus family, and to create a link between my heavy foliage base and my lovely orchid, I'm going to use these to create a visual link. So we have some of the green coming up from the base. Gorgeous texture on this, contrasts again beautifully against my foliage at the bottom. And contrast is a word that you'll hear me use an awful lot, and it's one of the principles and elements of design. And by picking something that has this very busy, fussy textural quality to it, it gives a brilliant contrast against the flat foliages there at the bottom. And it gives me a link between the green base, making my eye travel up there to the top of my beautiful orchid. And again, just to give me a little bit more height, I'm going to use some of these yucca leaves. So this has come from the yucca plant, and the top is a little bit sad looking, so we'll just chop that off, give ourselves a diagonal cut on the base, and we're going to use that behind the orchid to strengthen the height of my arrangement. And again, gives me some depth. And then I'm just going to sit one to the side so that we have that vertical height strengthened. I'm going to fiddle around with this just for a little while so we get it nice and straight. What I don't want it doing is angled out this way, because it makes my eye travel out and away from the design. So now if you look at the back, you'll see that my eye is travelling upwards, and then we pick up on this wonderful orchid and our eye travels back down to all the interesting foliages at the base. Then I have another piece of this lovely textural fern, and I'm going to bring that more towards the centre. Again, it'll break up the very heavy and dominant foliage at the base. It'll give me an interesting texture below those orchids. I don't need a great deal, it doesn't need to be too heavy and too imposing. And I'm going to start now to introduce the black of my eucalyptus. And I'm not going to put a huge amount of this in, because I think the design is very sophisticated. We don't want to overpower with too much black foliage. But here at the base, again, it'll give a fantastic contrast against the heavy green of the Fatsia at the bottom. And then hopefully, if I've got a nice straight piece, I'm going to bring the colour again up at the back. This one is beautifully curved inwards, if you have a look at that, so it'll be fantastic on the left-hand side of my design. A little bit of patience to manoeuvre it in between the palms. Spend a little bit of time, and there straight away we've got some black into the middle and all the way up to the top there at the base. And to create a visual, stronger focal point here at the base, I have these wonderful, one of my favourites. This is the red Naomi, fantastic rose. It opens into this huge head, very good rose, long lasting, fantastic one to use in this type of design because grouped together you're going to have real visual impact at the base. Now, one of the benefits of these Fatsia is that it's a strong, robust leaf, and it allows me to insert my stems straight through the middle of it without it getting damaged. Just again, play with them for a couple of minutes until you've got them sitting comfortably together. Now, I do have a third rose, but I feel the design will become very overfilled at the base if I use my third rose. So I'm just going to insert a small amount of the black foliage to my left hand side there, and that is quite enough to finish my design off. So what do we think of that? A little bit inspired by the vertical or line arrangement that we often see. This is a really popular design that we use a great deal at Mother's Day with just a single orchid and some beautiful foliages at the bottom. And I hope you've been inspired to have a little go yourself. Pop back very soon because we'll have a few more videos for you to watch. Bye for now.